Name is Richard. So first of all, the question is devolution. Is it straightforward? Is it simple? Do we have all the answers? No. This is something that's it's brand new to not just to Sussex, but to the southeast. And the UK is really a collaboration built on trust with a number of small nations, literally united around this kingdom. We have all sorts of different governance structures for the devolved nations within the UK. But in England, really everything is hyper centralized. Everything comes out of Westminster. In fact, we are probably the most centralized country in the developed world. So this journey of devolution in England is an attempt to try and rebalance that a little. And the experiment in England started really in the year 2000 when London became a, a devolved, I guess, a super city state. So that's what we started with in England, and we had lots to learn from. But London is a very different proposition to any other part of England. So what followed was then over time, particularly the other devolved areas, particularly in the sort of formal industrial heartland of England. So you'll see in the north of England and in the Midlands largely. But this Labour government said, right, we want to fast track some priority areas. And we want those areas to do two things at the same time. So that is to move towards devolution quickly and to have a strategic authority that has a directly elected mayor. We think that's going to unlock lots of funding and powers transferred away from Whitehall so that people in those communities can have more say over strategically, kind of long-term thinking, what happens in their area. But in order to do that, we want to see the local authority structures be more streamlined. And so the deal was, if you want the benefits that come with devolution, then you also need to save money and restructure your local authorities. And they've called that LGR, or local government reorganisation. So these four areas, Norfolk and Suffolk, Greater Essex, Sussex and Brighton, Hampshire and so on, were picked out of a few that applied or continued to sort of say, yes, we want to do this. So the devolution timetable is focused on establishing these strategic authorities in 2026. But the original plan was to have elections for mayor as well in those years, but they've been deferred to 2028. And the local government reorganisation is to kick off in 2026 to be also formalised in 2028. So Sussex and Brighton. So local government reorganisation and devolution. We have said, yes, please. We want to be in this fast track programme. We're up for it. But what we've discovered and what central government discovered is none of it's quite as straightforward as that. But I'll come to that in a minute. So firstly, thinking about local government reorganisation, because this is a prerequisite to devolution. What does that mean? Well, at the moment, Sussex is quite unique in that there is no single county council for Sussex, unlike in Essex or Norfolk or Surrey or even Hampshire. And what we have is two county councils, East Sussex and West Sussex, and one unitary city council in Brighton and Hove. But underpinning and beneath all of the county council, we have 12 rather, district and borough councils. So you will be no doubt familiar with that in Lewes as Lewes District Council, but there's also a number of district and borough councils in West and East Sussex. Now, at the moment, these 15 councils in total, there is a division of responsibilities, but there's also quite a lot that overlaps. And so for the everyday citizens, it can be very confusing sometimes about who to deal with when it comes to business rates or planning. If you want an extension on your house, if you want to apply for a grant to set up a business or for a charity, licensing, transport, other regulations, which councillors represent what and at what level, high streets, regeneration, tourism, public health, culture, education, all these sorts of things, it can be a little bit confusing about who deals with what. And that's why central government are quite keen to get rid of two-tier governance structures and to have everybody working with one unitary council, much like the situation in Brighton and Hove at the moment. So local government reorganisation is on that prerequisite that there are fewer, bigger councils across Sussex. So the process has been to try and firstly work out what the boundaries of those councils are going to be. And it's fair to say that there's not been a huge amount of agreement necessarily across Sussex about exactly what that should look like. What we do know is that Eastbourne, Hastings, Lewes, Rother, Wealdon, Ada, Arran, Chichester, Crawley, Horsham, Mid Sussex, and Worthing, as well as East Sussex and West Sussex county councils, will not exist as they are at the moment come 1st of April 2028. They will be abolished and they will be reconfigured under new unitary authority councils that will have new boundaries and new names. Brighton Hove City Council, already being unitary, will continue to exist, but it's quite likely that it will be required to get a bit bigger. So the government in the devolution paper that came out in December 24 said that they would quite like councils to serve a minimum of 500,000 people. Now that is just not how it works in Sussex. The county councils uh, represent around that or a bit more in West Sussex, but the district and boroughs nowhere near, and certainly not even anywhere near that for Brighton and Hove City Council. So what's clear is there would need to be some reconfiguration, and I'll come to what that might look like in a minute. So the deal is for local government reorganisation to reconfigure these unitary councils, and proposals went in from all of the counties and the district and boroughs to government at the end of last year that we made the case for a number of different options. Now, those options suggested either 3, 4, or 5 unitary councils across Sussex. The decision was intended to be made on the 25th of March by central government about which their preferred option was, and they did make those decisions for the other fast track areas. So Greater Essex, Hampshire and Solent, Norfolk and Suffolk were all told this is how many unitary councils you're going to have, and this is how they're going to be configured. We were told in Sussex, you guys, it's a bit more complicated. You've not really done all the homework needed for us to be convinced that this is the right sort of economic and cultural configuration. Go back to the drawing board a little bit, and we will make our decision later on in the summer. But we do have a preferred option, and we really would like you to try and figure out how to get close to that. So I'll show you that in a minute. So I'm only going to talk a little bit about local government reorganisation because really devolution is the thing that is about opportunity and is about something new and is about a way that Sussex can lean into sometimes maybe some different ways of working because we've never had what we call a strategic authority before. So with the new unitary authorities, each will have a leader and a deputy leader, as is at the moment, and those two leadership positions will form collectively a cabinet or a strategic authority board sitting underneath a directly elected mayor. Now, so last bit on local government reorganisation. As I said, government have looked at all the propositions and not really liked any of them that have come in from all the different councils. And so what they've suggested is their preference is for something that looks a little bit like this. And there's work to be done over the next few months to see at all whether this is viable. Now, it's definitely not gone down well, and there are lots of challenges, legal challenges, and people working out how to kind of fight for something a bit different. I'm not going to get into that. And it's particularly a hot topic in Lewes, so I'm sure many of you are involved in some of these conversations. But what government is hoping we get somewhere near is two unitary authorities in West Sussex. So that, as you can see here, is the orange one at the top, which kind of covers mostly the rural and the northern urban areas of kind of Crawley and Horsham, and then a southern coastal authority, which would cover the existing footprints of Arran, Worthing, and Ada. So, to all intents and purposes, apart from the bit of Chichester Harbour, you're looking at a coastal county authority and a northern county authority within West Sussex. Then East Sussex would more or less remain the existing footprint of East Sussex County Council. So that would include Hastings, Rother, Eastbourne, Wealdon, and most of Lewes. Now, the proposal is that Brighton, which, as I said, are currently a unitary authority, gets a little bit bigger to the east. So that would be taking some wards from the current Lewes District Council. That would be East Saltdean and Telscombe Cliffs, Peacehaven West, Peacehaven East, Peacehaven North, and Falmer Parish from Kingston Ward, which would extend the Brighton Hove population from 270,000 to about 308,000. And so what we have got in place already, despite no mayoral elections, is a Sussex and Brighton Strategic Authority. So this is a layer of governance that will sit across the whole of Sussex. And it became a formal legal entity at the end of March. It has a team of people in place, certainly for the first 2 years, a chief executive, a number of strategic directors, and it will start to appoint other staff after the local elections in May to look at particular elements of what the county authority is there to do. So, what is strategic authority? And I'm going to slightly interchangeably use these terms. So, you've got combined county authority, which is what this is. Mayoral authority means a combined county authority which will have a mayor, which ours will. Actually, government are trying to streamline and simplify that by calling it a strategic authority. So, apologies if I slip between the three. For the sake of this conversation, they all mean the same thing. So, what are the core areas that the strategic authority will be looking at? And it's important. The word strategy there is useful to consider because its job is not to deliver frontline services. That will still be the unitary councils. It is to set budgets, to set policy, strategy, and importantly, to be looking ahead over long term. This isn't just about what lots of councils are only able to do, which is the length of a kind of 4 year or like a 1 year budget and a 4 year economic plan. This is about 10, 20, 30 years. So mayors will be responsible for these areas. So economic development, public safety and health, housing and planning, skills and employment, transport and infrastructure, environment and climate. So there'll be all sorts of levels at which they are responsible for these and all sorts of levels at which they do intervention. But these are all areas of responsibility that the mayors will have. Now, as I said, some of them will have very specific KPIs which they're judged about. Others will be just areas of consideration that they need to have at front of mind. So, what does that look like in reality? What powers and duties will the mayoral authority have and the directly elected mayor? Well, they will have a power to convene and a duty to respond. So if there is an opportunity, if there is a big, if the data shows that there's a particular bottleneck or problem, or some of the performance of the region is going backwards, then they have a power to convene all the experts and all the key players to work out why and what to do. And they have a duty to respond if people are coming forward saying, actually, this needs to change, or we've got some responsibility to do X, Y, Z in this area. They have a duty to collaborate. This is really important. The mayor is not some dictatorial figure who can sort of wade around casting spells. Their job is to, in the nature of the role, is to use that convening power to collaborate on responses. It's to enable and equip and to hold accountable delivery partners. And that will be in the public sector as well as voluntary sector and in some cases private sector partners as well. They will be able to call in powers of planning. So they will be developing a strategic spatial plan, which will be looking at housing, it'll be looking at commercial real estate, it'll be looking at things like transport infrastructure, bridges, roads, expansions to airports and ports and universities and all those sorts of things. If it goes in a kind of 10-year strategic plan, then it's going to be very hard to block it. And that is seen as, a way to invest in the sort of long-term infrastructure of Sussex in ways that have been very, very difficult at sort of district borough level. But obviously people have concerns about that as well, thinking that this is going to ride roughshod over local community voice. So lots of conversations will happen around this, and there'll be lots of consultation around the spatial plan as that starts to develop. But it will change a little bit the dynamic in terms of how a mayor can operate. Tax precepts, so things like might be some power around uh, things like a tourism tax that's on the table. Mayors will have the power to be able to charge tourism tax that they can then ring fence and use for things like infrastructure, security, regeneration. They will have some powers of using other levies and taxes around things like adult skills and other bits and pieces. There's lots of calls for full fiscal devolution. We're a long way from that yet, but maybe watch this space. It's certainly something that mayors are advocating for. But really crucially, they will have the power to invest in long-term growth. So this is about looking ahead 10, 20, 30 years, coming up with a vision for what Sussex should be and how growth is not just vertical, but also lateral across the county, how all parts eventually will benefit. It might not be in the same way at the same time, but how there is a clear roadmap for that. Um, So, through the lens of climate, which is what you're here discussing today, it's important to kind of be mindful of two things, I think, is that it will be one of the mayor's competency areas, and it will be some priority thinking when it comes to the three main reports that the mayor has to produce. So, one is a growth plan, one is a prosperity plan, and one is this spatial sort of development strategy. And I think, recognition of uh, Sussex's, the fact that 80% of Sussex is undeveloped land, that we have a large and populous national park snaking its way through most of Sussex, that we have obviously an extensive coastline and some quite unique climate and ecological considerations with all the things that the mayor is going to be looking at. So I'm, very confident that expertise around climate, around nature recovery, around food security will be really key to the thinking of the mayoral authority. However, will they have very specific KPIs around net zero and around climate action? Uh, Probably not. Probably not in the first instance. It's hard to say, what will come down from central government and be devolved around that. It's certainly not in any clear documentation around mayoral priorities. So, so there's work to be done to be able to ensure that voices around climate action are heard and understood and clear, so that those three documents, the growth plan, the prosperity plan, and the spatial plan, really speak to people's concerns and also people's sort of, evidence-led insight around how we do climate action properly in Sussex. A couple of examples on the screen of where that's already starting to happen. So Climate Southeast have already done a lot of work around what they're calling making devolution work for climate and nature. And so they're working with all of the priority areas at the moment around how that thinking can be embedded in new structural setups. There is Climate Change, which is the sort of it's a national group, but they have a very active Brighton chapter, and they have themselves done lots of convening. This a report that came out only a couple of weeks ago called "Making Devolution Work for Climate and Nature in Brighton and Hove," and so there's a lot of focused thinking around the climate and devolution there. Down in the bottom right here, you'll see a setup. There's a new SCAN group, Sussex Climate and Nature Network. This is following climate and nature networks that have happened in other parts of the country and have actually been quite effective. So there is a new Sussex group that is really only just starting to emerge, but they're very keen that this becomes a strategic voice covering the whole of Sussex that is able to bring together various groups and all of the unitary authorities and speak directly to the new strategic authority. And then I've put in the bottom left corner an example of related organisations like I think the food partnerships, for whom climate is a very big part of their agenda. Uh, what they've done is started to coalesce around the devolution conversation. So you've had many different food partnerships in East Sussex and West Sussex and Brighton and Hove, all working, together, but also quite separately in terms of constitution and focus. So now they've set up the Sussex Alliance of Food Partnerships to really focus their collective attention. So again, they've got a clearer and bigger voice when it comes to influencing the mayoralty. So just give you some examples there of how work is already being done, and it's really important that all of you guys at Lewis Climate Hub are plugged into and helping shape some of these emerging conversations. So I will wrap up now. I'm probably gone way over my time, but I just wanted to point towards a couple of things I mentioned earlier. Sussexandthecity.info. So this is our project site. We've got a podcast, we've got a weekly bulletin, we've got lots of insights. So we are absolutely exploring issues of climate, of nature recovery. We've got interviews with people from Sussex Bay, from the South Downs National Park, circular economy experts, people from the Campaign for the Protection of Rural England. So you'll be interested in some of the insights that have come through there. We have an event on the 30th of April, so very soon, next week, and it is an update on everything that has been happening through devolution so far. We've got I will have some special guests, national and regional experts. So I do recommend you come along to that. I'll make sure. I hope that's enough of a little intro to what's going on, and I hope that helps shape your conversation. I hope you have a lovely rest of the day. Do get in contact with me, Richard at alwayspossible.co.uk. Do follow the Sussex and the City project, and Paul, I'm sure, can make any introductions if needed. So, yeah, thank you very much for listening.